Welcome back to Agenda. Before the break, we spoke about the role that this dish behind me played in bringing some of those famous images back to Earth. Now, some more of the memories of that day 40 years ago.
Buzz, this is Houston. You have approximately 3 minutes until you must commence your EVA termination activities. Over. Roger, understand.
So as you both look back on it now, as we approach the 40th anniversary, how do you look back at this event and the fact that you were, other than being on the moon itself, you were very much right there on the front line? How does it feel?
We were just incredibly lucky. I mean, I still can't get over the fact that I came to Australia a couple of times from UK and then couldn't wait to get back, and luckily found that they were recruiting for these tracking stations. So I was recruited in England, and I spent 30 years with the tracking business and NASA and the space biz, and I just consider they were the golden years, and we were just incredibly lucky to get those jobs.
And Hamish, you wrote one of the definitive accounts of the whole space program, from Gemini through Apollo. Yeah. And I think one of your aims was to put on the record the role of Honeysuckle Tracking Station.
And the tracking network too, not just Honeysuckle. Honeysuckle was the prime reason, but there was also the tracking stations, which had a major part in the mission, were very rarely mentioned.
Tell me about one of the experiences. I was fascinated to read about John Gorton showing up unannounced on the day that the moon landing took place.
Well, he didn't just show up. I believe he was probably invited, but we didn't know he was coming on site. And I must say my own initial reaction when a million press corps and everybody else wandered into our operations area was quite negative. I thought it was a needless interruption to the preparation for that particular day.
And me being the station photographer, I had to peel off and grab my camera and follow him around taking pictures.
And so you were distracted from your main role?
For a short while, yeah. For a short while.
So, and there was another visit a week later or so from the Prime Minister of the day?
The following Saturday, I was working on overtime. We were going quiet by then, but I was working some overtime, and the guard from the gate rang up and said, the Prime Minister's here, what will I do? And I said, are you kidding me? He said, no, he's really here. And so I sent him up. So he came up and explained to me that his wife hadn't seen the station and she wanted to, so he brought his wife up. And he arrived in just an ordinary Toyota car with no sort of previous warning.
And that was unannounced?
And it was unannounced, yes. And then I showed him around. At the end, he seemed more interested in the Mills Cross than what happened in Apollo.
So, actually, he was one of the few Prime Ministers of Australia who had a genuine interest in technology. As you know, he was a Spitfire pilot during the war and all the rest of it, and so he was pretty keen on technology, but I didn't know that bit about more interested in the Mills Cross. Of course, that was an Australian facility.
Yeah, because that was an Australian.
We were basically a NASA facility on Australian soil.
There's a debate, and often a debate about money going to science and the whole area of space and research. How important was this, do you think, as a milestone? You both have been close observers of the space program. You worked in it for many years and were there when this milestone took place. How important was it, do you think, for humankind?
Well, from my point of view, I always quote, it took 400,000 people working for a common goal to achieve the impossible in 8 years. So the message to me there is everybody should work together, not fight. Everybody works together and the impossible can be achieved. The other thing that, if you step back and look at the galactic picture, it takes 245 million years to go around the galaxy once. And if you look back to where we were at this time, this part of the galaxy before, it was Pangaea. There was one supercontinent before the dinosaurs. Now, man's only been around for 1 million years. We're not even sure how long, but say it's 1 million years. We've already left the planet, and that to me is a fantastic achievement.
And also, I think we have to consider that I think mankind's curiosity needs to be assuaged from time to time, plus Also, fundamental research is so important. A lot of people complained about the amount of money that was spent on the Apollo project, and it's true. But I remember one of the nuns in the Belgian Congo wrote to one of von Braun's rocket scientists and said, "Why are you spending all this money?" And he told the story of the medieval person who was incredibly rich, and as usual he lived in a castle with all the peasants around his gate fighting for his scraps of food, etc. And he could have saved a lot of those peasants and fed them and looked after them, but instead he spent his money on a hobby of his, which was developing glass lenses. And he invented the microscope. And billions of people have been saved by the invention of the microscope because it discovered bacteria and everything else. So that was the value of fundamental research. It's not always seen at the time, but I think going to the moon was an incredible bit of research for so many areas, wasn't it?
Yes, but I was saying that another which could be a survival of the human race factor is that if we don't leave the Earth and have some presence somewhere else, if the Earth is clobbered by some space junk, I believe the dinosaurs are supposed to be wiped out by something like that. So supposing we had a catastrophic situation on Earth, we would have somebody somewhere else, maybe Mars or the moon, and they can come back and repopulate the Earth when the Earth recovers.
Yeah, it's a bit late to develop that capability when it's coming in on the last bit of the trajectory, isn't it?
As you look back 40 years on, how do you look back at that period of your careers, of your lives, on that, what was a momentous day right around the world?
Well, it was a momentous day, but there were many momentous days during the whole of the Apollo program. Amongst other things, I look back and realised that I never saw my children grow up. It was just something that was so important to us at the time that, that came first before anything else.
Well, see, during the mission we used to work 12.5-hour shifts for the whole duration of the mission, which meant that there wasn't much else you could do. Your personal life sort of went on hold while you concentrated on the mission.
I used to sleep on site a fair bit. There always had to be somebody there 24/7, so many of the missions I slept on site. And I only found out the other day that my wife never saw Armstrong step onto the moon. She was back home with 2 young kids, and I didn't have time to ring her up and say, "Armstrong's getting out early." And she said if it wasn't on Humphrey B. Bear, I wouldn't have known that it was going to be early. And she said, I knew it was going to be on the news later that night, so that was all right.
Now, you talk about Apollo 11. I think the media helped create this momentous step on the moon. But for us, Apollo 8 was probably more exciting because we didn't know what was going to happen. It was the first time we left the Earth.
And we had the lion's share of that mission.
We did, yes.
It was all in the southern hemisphere.
When they went behind the moon, would they come out the other side? Would the motor work to put them into orbit? There were so many things could have gone wrong.
So gutsy, such a gutsy decision to even think about it at that point.
It was
development.
It was a very sudden. It was a sudden decision, and it pushed the program forward so that we did achieve Kennedy's goal.